You are listening to Ras Temari Radio, Offense Necessary, where we discuss everything but politics. My name is Zode. We're here with our good friend David, who's been kind enough to offer us some of his time. David, you have a background in the arts, and you feel very strongly about certain issues involving the arts in Addis Ababa. Could you start off by telling us how you got into the arts and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Right. So, as Zodi told you, my name is David Williams. And I work in an art gallery, so like Addis Fine Arts is where I work at. And it's kind of like an art gallery that has been around for like almost 5 years. And we're mostly engaged in modern arts. And basically like contemporary arts. So my background is just like I had the passion of actually I had the passion for arts. I do a little bit of sketching myself, stuff like that. So it was kind of like a career choice, and like I actually applied, I got employed, and I basically managed the gallery. And so let me talk about a little bit about Addis Ababa.
Sure, absolutely.
Let me tell you about it. So it was co-founded by two amazing people, which is like my direct boss, which basically managed like the Addis Ababa branch, is called Masai, I believe. And he's been in the art world for almost 40 years. Like he had a gallery space in London, he had like gallery space in LA, and he wanted to give back. Like he was one of the diaspora communities, and he came back here and he was like doing simple art exhibitions. Not a gallery space, but simple exhibitions. So another kind woman from London, by the name of Rakib Saleh, them two, like decided to open an art gallery that would be like, trying to shake the art market in that place. So their basic idea was like, why are not artists represented as labels do it, So how the music label industry works. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to represent a bunch of artists and expose them outside the country. So that's their basic idea. So they opened it like 5 years ago. So we have like two galleries, one in Addis, one in London.
So this is all as part of a project to try and give artists the opportunity to create the right platforms to get their work out there, right? Because no matter how talented a person is,
exactly.
If there's no audience for it, people aren't recognizing it, it kind of goes to waste, right? So which is a shame, right?
So let me tell you a little bit about the art world. So basically, like what the difference between Ethiopia and the international community is. So art is like very respected, very well-known subject, but not when it comes to here, So the people, like there are like amazing art fairs outside. Like there are like art. The art market by itself is very, very, very like. How do I explain it? Very vast and very big, and this like how do I explain this? So there's this structure. Let's talk about this structure about like the art community. So there are like collectors. There are like people who buy, people who collect, people who appreciate those arts, right? Mm-hmm. So imagine them as a pyramid, right? So this pyramid at the bottom is just people who like fans of artworks. Mm-hmm. And when it gets to the top, there are like collectors. You've seen auctions, you've seen like a lot of art getting sold for like millions of dollars,
right.
So those
wealthy
people,
benefactors,
exactly.
Or patrons of the
exactly. So the basic idea is these people are the ones who set the price and set, what do you call it? Like what's interesting in the art community.
Right.
So their basic focus, like for the past 20 years, was Asian art. So I've witnessed a lot of like artworks like done on paper, like with water breathed, getting sold for millions of dollars.
Just to clarify, you're talking about people from the West, like Europeans and
Americans.
Yeah,
like
so their interest is more Asian art.
It was.
Okay.
So in the past 10 years, so that absolute focus like differed, and they started focusing on African art now. So people from like major artists from Ghana, South Africa, Egypt are selling like hot pockets. So what our gallery decided to actually do about this stuff was the fact that like if there's focus on African art, who's going to represent the Ethiopian artists? Because if you take back to history and reality, the art world was actually respected like 50, 60 years ago, Like you can mention artists like Afro Takli, Nulsa Kerreta, they're like big names, you know. But like it stayed stagnant, like as the way it is, and the Ethiopians do not like appreciate it as much as it did.
And you could say this happens around what era, like?
Yeah, I mean, like you could say in the like imperial
Yeah.
ages, like back in the days, like when Haile Selassie was king, you know.
Late now.
Late,
So we started going away from being interested in the arts
Yeah.
as a community in the 60s, 70s kind of thing.
Exactly,
Right,
exactly. So like when you come and think about it, like the artist, like the now generation artist, is not getting proper representation. He's not getting, or he or she is not getting the proper education, like the proper exposure. They're not, because like in like every other like education, like universities that are outside, like there's only one campus dedicated to teaching you everything you want to know, and they're so structured of teaching you like it's like courses. You take courses like, so there are departments where you learn like contemporary arts, where you learn how to draw realistically, and there are people like where there are departments where like you make jewelry and stuff, but like still it's one school,
Right.
for the whole of Ethiopia.
Sure.
So basically, who teaches you there are like people who are artists, very famous artists, very good artists, but still, there's still a structure.
Right.
The students from there cannot like, deviate from
Sure.
what they're taught.
This is in Europe. They call this classical.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. This is the term
Exactly.
classical, which is
Yeah.
everything is rules,
Yeah.
as opposed to romantic, which is usually
Yeah.
so people sort of following their own heart or following their own kind of. So we still have this very rigorous, structured, classical kind of education in the arts, is what you were
It's
saying.
very true. Like,
Right.
that's
And
that's
we've never
what happened.
really veered away from it.
Never
Right.
did. So as I have witnessed, I mean, like it might be different, but like as a high, I have witnessed, because I like basically my job like requires me to actually go visit this artist who's up and coming, who needs representation. We do that. So what I saw was the students are structured, right? Like so, like what they're considered creative about is what they're taught. So that these teachers do not like let them, how do I put this? Let them create their own, like, I can't find a word for it. They can't let them create their own like zone where they're actually creative by themselves.
Sure.
So the structure for them is just like one-sided, like it's just straight up. So you get graded, you graduate with like your degree of arts, but after that, the artist tries to become creative as much as he can with his own concepts and developing his own like concepts and stuff. But where does he sell this stuff?
Right, and also it sounds like before we get to the commoditization, this is a reflection of like Ethiopian education in general.
Exactly.
Where everybody, uses rote memorization.
Mhm.
There's very little, in very strong contrast to American education, which
Exactly.
is the opposite, right? Where like you are tailored into a structure.
Mhm.
This is what you are supposed to do. You accept what you're doing. Very little critical thinking. Very little, and for an artist, I would think it's one thing if you study other fields, but for an artist, if you're so used to being in a structured, rigorous environment where you do what your teacher tells you to do, which is the way the social sciences and liberal arts are. For an artist, a creative artist, I don't imagine that's the best training for you to be creative, right?
I'm not going to lie about it. Like, I mean, there are like very creative artists, like teachers there that like most of our artists are like students that actually pass through that. And
Yeah.
even the teachers themselves are actually represented by us, because like we can mention like people like Addis Ababa, and he's an actual lecturer there, but like he does his own artwork, and we actually represent him in the national market. So these type of artists teach you modern art and how to grow with it. So like that part of art is not represented, because like if you go outside and look what's considered art 50 years ago and what's considered art right now is very different.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean is like, so basic canvas paintings, sculptures, oil paintings, water paintings, sketches, those were what we knew were art.
Right.
So like the big movers like Van Gogh and we know what I'm talking about. So those people like made modern art, like made art grow. So now what we consider art is the person's creative space. Whatever he creates, he might make a sandwich and put something on it and call it art. It could be.
Sure.
So that space and that creative growth, it's very, very like minimal when it comes to the Ethiopian artists.
Mm-hmm.
But there are good artists that actually didn't go through this structure and actually self-taught and self-made and made their own beautiful art, which are like you can name them contemporary, you can call them modern, you can call them anything, but like they are making beautiful art. But still, the representation system denies them of whatever they want to, whatever story they want to tell.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's interesting you say this because, in a sense, what I'm getting is that if you start defining art, you start placing people in a structure, then you're restricting it.
Yeah, exactly.
But one other way to look at it is it's that restriction that is necessary because artistic movements almost always grow out of a reaction. You know what I mean? Like I mentioned classicism and then romanticism. The reaction to romanticism is realism. Yeah. Why do we all have to follow art when there's plenty of real stuff going on in the world? And then the reaction to realism is surrealism. Why do we always have to stick to reality when dreams and the subconscious world? So in a sense, possibly defining it, structuring it in that way, can actually create the impetus for people because artists are supposed to be subversive.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they're supposed to be rebellious people, right?
Yeah.
On the margins of society.
Yeah. So that's basically it. That you have to revolt and you have to get out of that structure and actually do your own creative space. That's what art is by itself. Like it's not about the quality of what you do. It's about your perspective. You could make an art on a piece of paper and maybe the quality of that art might not be what it's worth, but it's still your creative space.
Sure.
That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, basically that's what it is.
Do you think there's a compromise? Because it sounds like you're very much invested in, and it's a very important project to help artists not only get their stuff out there, but really commoditize and commercialize so that they can even support themselves or they can be rewarded for it. Do you think that there's some compromise that goes into it, though? Yeah. Where, like, if they become commoditized, if they become commercialized, and they start getting rewarded for material right away, where that takes away that creative edge or that rebellious...
True. Like, I mean, like, an artist cannot be as hot as he is when he's, like fresh starting, with the ambition and stuff, like, he can't be, But in reality, yeah, like, I've witnessed artists like that have been stuck. It's like that creative space. You need, like, your own mental state to actually accomplish that. Because when back in the days when you were young and you were actually trying to be creative on those stuff, the reality is, like, you have way too much ambition. You're, like, very eager to actually try a lot of stuff. But as you get famous and as you are actually commoditizing your artworks and actually making money out of them, I've witnessed a lot of people getting stuck in one specific art style because they're just comfortable,
Right.
And that by itself, would take the creative space by itself. And it's just what happens, like, because an artist has its own, like, let's call it signature, But after he figures out that part, most of them get stuck in that way. But there are some artists that actually, like, try different stories, try different edges, because they do not care about the commoditization, but like actually marking their name and the ground, and making history. Sure. That's why.
I mean, what's the? It brings up the what's his name? Banksy. Banksy.
Banksy. I'm a huge fan, man.
Which nobody really knows who he is. I've heard people complain, he's overrated because maybe it's a she. It's this mysterious person who does these urban art, sort of these shadowy figures, and kind of comes in and does these little paintings on walls and stuff like that, and then disappear. Nobody knows who Banksy really is. And there's part of the cachet of it is this person is unknown. It's a part of the mystery of it. But of course, whoever this Banksy person is, I'm guessing they're not getting anything out of this. They're not getting fame recognition. So how does money get back to Banksy if nobody knows Banksy is?
That's the funny part. I mean, like, an artist like Banksy, like himself, like him or she, because we don't actually know. Because I've seen a lot of documentaries telling about stories about, like, there might be a group of people, there might be a woman, there might be a lot of stuff. But, like, what made Banksy? It's the movement.
Sure.
It's his representation. It's not about, like, him making money. He wanted, like, his basic agenda is against capitalism.
Sure.
What capitalism has done to the world. which I really genuinely respect, because if you have followed any of his art pieces, like he started in London, just starts tagging a lot of stuff. It's like very small, very tiny, but like very good. I mean, they had a story to tell. But not knowing like what like a lot of people might consider Banksy being overrated is just like his anonymity, and he's not getting anything out of it, and it's always very dramatic, because the most famous news of all Banksy's like happened like almost like 5 years ago, I think. So there was this artwork it was a demo on paper, and it was called The Girl with the Balloon. Have you seen that? So he framed it up himself. Nobody knew about this. So that painting got sold in auction for like, I think it was $3 million. $3 million. So the moment it got sold, the moment the hammer hit that pedestal, the painting itself starts soft shredding.
Right.
Because he had his own mechanism.
It's almost like a car. They say the worst investment, not in Ethiopia, but in the U.S. or most places, is a car. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses most of it. It becomes a used car.
Yeah. The exact opposite happened, because this piece was just like, everybody said it was a Banksy's work, but everybody made sure after that painting itself shredded. Now it's worth $9 million.
Yeah.
Double the price, and triple the price, and it's still getting resold again and again.
Right.
But Banksy's not about that. He's not about the money. He's not about what he's getting out of this. Banksy's about like his or like, I don't know why I think he's a man. I really don't know. So it. So basically, what Banksy what he's about is just like art by its purest form. It's just making a statement. So that's what he's trying to prove. It's not about the money. But then, like, when you see the other side of the world, like, you see artists like selling a lot of stuff, like making a lot of money, stuff, but still valued. It's still art.
Just to go back to you for a second, this perspective that you gained on this, is it from where you randomly sort of worked at a art gallery and you gained this passion, or is that what drew you to working in an art gallery? Really. Where does that passion come from? Or that?
So like, this is like actually a funny story. So like, my late uncle, very respected, God rest his soul, was an artist. So he was like back in the days artist. Like, he didn't make money out of it because he didn't actually sold his arts, but he had a good hand. So back in the days, there was no print media. So if you wanted like a boutique or a restaurant or something, if you want signs, there's an actual person that comes there, draws on them.
Right.
Because they have good handwriting and you can actually make good lines. So like photoshops and stuff like that, he used to make those. So back in the days when I was a kid, I used to look at him do stuff like that. Like I remember one time we went to the shop, and the shop owner was just leaning and just talking to him. And he picked up a pen, just started sketching her. When I saw that like how like accurate that picture was, that just blew my mind. That was the greatest thing ever. So
that really made an impression. How old were you on this?
I was like 6, 7.
Oh wow! Okay, so you've always had an appreciation.
Yeah, I did.
Have you ever like actually done as an artist yourself?
Yeah. Like, so I was self-taught. Like, so basically, like when you're a kid, you just start drawing comic books. Like, because I had a very funny obsession with like Dragon Ball. So like drawing Goku's hair is like every time if you open my like exercise.
This is the Japanese anime.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know if young people are still know what Dragon Ball is. It's a bit of an obsession for older yeah.
But like, so I used to draw that. Like I just practiced, and I just started drawing figures and so, like I wouldn't consider myself an artist, but like I actually do pretty dope sketches by myself.
Drawings, paintings. That's pretty.
Yeah, like I'm actually trying to grow on it because. What made me actually like wanted like actually like maybe I could do this is the actual job that I have right now.
Right.
So I had an interest in art, but I didn't know squat about what the art market was like. You know, like I hear about exhibitions happening in my old campus or what do you call it? Like Panika or something, like museums and stuff. Like that's where I was exposed to big arts, like valuable art. But I didn't know anything about it. So the moment I walked in that door and started working for Addis Fine Arts, I was exposed by myself. Like I was like, whoa, what is going on? And the best thing that for me to be exposed to this market is Addis Fine Arts, because there are not a lot of galleries actually in Addis. commoditizing and like representing
There
them
are
out
very few. Yeah.
Very few. I mean, like if you wanted to name them all, they're like 10. I'm not gonna
yeah.
So the difference is like these galleries for the past, I don't know, like since the gallery business has been open, it was like 40 years, maybe 50 years.
Right.
So what it does is the representation of these artists is done in the means of the gallery making money. So what you do is you're a gallery owner. So you sit back and you have a space. So the artist will come find you and rent your space to show his work. That's the one way. The other way would be where the gallery owner would actually like talk to you and like set up a price, and the gallery would get its cut from whatever art piece you sell. So it's like more like a souvenir shop type of situation, you know. But like the gallery market started growing and growing and growing, but there was no representation for them in the international market because like galleries are not the only ones selling. There are art fairs that are like big. Like I can mention like Fritz, B54. I can mention Armory in New York. This is like Art Dubai, one of the biggest ones. So these like art fairs are like genuinely designed to expose artists from different countries in one setting. It's like let's call it like a world exhibition. So like people from everywhere come through. So when they open the gallery, it's like, why are not these art pieces there? Who's representing Ethiopia?
Absolutely. And I can say real quick, as somebody, I lived in New York before I came here. I've been to the Armory. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. It's not just for people who are interested in art, but sort of people who are interested in the direction things are taking. You know what I mean? There's what you know what I mean? What curiosity or what kind of interest do people is being piqued? You know, right now.
So you're very true. That's the reality. You know why? Because like the other different stuff is like so white space gallery. Like Armory is a white space gallery, which is like plain old white space. Like what we have is a white space gallery. But if you go to the other like spaces, like this is different because white space gallery is more of a representation of modern contemporary art, where like not only artworks that are like hang on a wall is represented with people like we have a lot of artists that do like performance arts, videos, installations and stuff. Yeah. So like it's trying to shake the like it started in 1994. This is the whole contemporary art. It's started in the 90s and the 80s, and it's different. It's not like the thing that you're used to. So like what we brought about was like that needs to be represented. That needs to happen.
But see, do you get the same experience? Like I've gone to especially on like school trips and stuff like that when you're young. To when I was in London, they got the Tate Modern, which I actually think is cool. If you like modern, the most amazing place I've been to is Pompidou. The Pompidou in Paris, which is really trippy and has the Brancusi stuff and all that really cool modern Picasso and stuff like that, and then has like much more contemporary, really strange kind of things, and is an experience. The Guggenheim and then New York and all that, but like a lot of people's reaction to modern art, they're not really into art. And even me, I'm just not being really into the arts. It's like, how is this art? I'm sorry. Like, what am I looking at? This abstraction. Like, everybody sees, an El Greco painting, and they go, okay. Even if they don't understand the meaning or the context or the import of it, the technical aspect of it, seeing an old Renaissance classical painting is like, oh my God, I could never do that, right? But then people look at even Van Gogh is verging on people being like, I've been to the Van Gogh Museum with a random tourist when I went to Amsterdam. And the guys just kept being like, "Oh, he's just lucky that I didn't," come up with that's the popular reaction to modern art is, I'm sorry, how is this art thing? Here's a canvas that's blue, and the painting is called Blue. And you know what I mean? Like people laugh at it like this is just really pretentious.
Very true.
The British call this art wank.
Exactly.
So what is your response to people who have that reaction?
So like this is a very funny question because I was most people. I didn't consider that art because like I've seen arts where like very minimalist, very simple. Like I've seen art like on a white canvas there was a white black dot, and that was the art. I was like, okay, this is very simple. What is he doing? You know, like I was that guy.
And where's the technical gift?
Exactly.
If any of us can do it, then like is this guy not tricking us into accepting his genius or whatever?
Yeah. And it's all about, like, again, when I started this conversation, I was talking about those art collectors that are doing this. You know, like it's not about like this not being art. People's like I started off the conversation with like people's creative space is their art. Whatever that you create is art by yourself. You can make a meal for yourself, and that could be art. So I had that perspective where I respected like graffiti art, comic art, funny arts, like those stuff that I really enjoyed. I didn't consider this as art.
Right. It's anything you infuse with meaning.
Yeah.
Right? Like some people, like in taking care of your space around you and organizing things, sort of that little daily satisfaction you get. That's meaningful to people, right? And that's art.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Well, when I started this job, though, I started noticing stuff. So like, this is where I really come to think my actual curator, my boss, he actually taught me that this is considered art because of not what you see on the canvas, but the art is the expression. Because when I started, there was a show called Tzada in our space. It was by a real famous artist, which I really want to give a shout out to, Salome Mulata. Very famous, very good. And I didn't get her art at first. Because, you know, like her brush strokes were not symmetric. She's just like, you know, like it was just like, looks like a child made them. But in reality, that was not it. Every brush stroke on that canvas was an expression of what she felt. And she drew, when I started hearing about the art pieces, it's like she drew about like women in the household. How misrepresented they are, how big they are. Because this figure, you can actually like find it on Instagram, you can see her pieces. Her figures are like women, half drawn, half like cut off, like half like they're not fully finished, but like with big hands. So those hands, I didn't get who draws a hand like that. This is so unstructured, and it's like it looks like somebody who doesn't know how to draw drew.
Right.
But that's not it, because she expressed that brushstroke and that big hand as an expression of how they move the family and how they're the hand of the family. So you can see that feminist approach. You can see that, you know, like expression. You know, then you go into the titles and how the artist titles them. You know, so I got exposed to a lot of artists that did really cool stuff, really expressive stuff, which I know from who I was about a year ago, and now those paintings getting sold for thousands of dollars, like they're so undervalued. Now I value them more, you know, because it's not about just your ability to actually draw properly. It's all about art expression. So like if you go to Van Gogh, all the messy works, all the contemporary artworks that you're seeing is the language by itself is expression. That's it. You're expressing what you feel. So an actual stranger could come if he's a genuine like lover of arts. That person that actually come feel what the artist drew on that canvas. You get it?
Absolutely. It's funny because again, I've never really understood. I'm more of a literature person, more of a history person. Right? Yeah. I've never really had that intimate interaction. But you know, when we talk about modernism, I misunderstood is, you know, Jackson Pollock stuff. You know, Jackson Pollock, American artist. People see it, and a lot of people are like, this just looks like scribbled painting. Right? You know? But really, what he's capturing is motion. Yeah. And it was in a context that was very subversive, right? It was very rebellious. But people had one concept of art, and he's like, no, this is motion and music. Apparently, he had all these ideas about jazz, which was emergent in that time. This is the early 20th century, right? And also, people will be like, well, anybody could do that. No. To do what Jackson Pollock did was like actually a very strong industrial undertaking. To really trying to capture the way like motion and music naturally are displayed on art, and then to bring it into a museum, and everybody had one idea of art, and this is like this guy's coming in and having a completely different. But people still have that reaction to Jackson Pollock, like I mean, this could be kids. I think I kind of got a little bit of that. You know, Rodin, the sculptor. So when I was in college, I had a job as a doing restoration with sculptures and that kind of thing. Mostly just maintenance, like literally just soap and water. So I got up and close to these Rodin sculptures, you know, the Burgers to Galais, which is the Burghers, the townspeople of Calais. The story is they have to sacrifice their lives for the town of Calais. They know that they've just saved the people of Calais by sacrificing their lives, but they know they're going to die. So, and each one of these is probably like 7 or 8 different individual sculptors. Each one of them have this different, very emotional reaction to knowing that they're going to die, but that now in their death they have sacrificed and had some meat. And when you get up close to these sculptures, washing them and taking the crap out of the little corners of it, you start seeing in this very intimate way that there's all this detail and intentionality that most of us who don't have, like you, a background, and all right, we just go there at the museum, we're like, all right, cool, what's so great about this, you know what I mean? So yeah, I guess it's a process to really try to understand.
Yeah, like, it's all about the depth. I mean, it does have depth. Then it works like this, have more expression. Like, I can mention an artist, like, of course, everybody knows him. You know Basquiat.
Yeah.
Basquiat was an artist. Yeah, exactly. So he started with, like, what is it? Nemo. They started tagging, like, it's like Banksy, but, like, it's different. So he started tagging, like small proverbs in New York. It was like, same-o, not Nemo, same-o.
Okay.
Because they were talking about the current situation that they're in, which means, like, same old stuff, same old things. So they have a lot of proverbors that are...
What era is this in Basquiat?
This is like 1980s, 1990s. Very...
So
he's
pretty
dead
recent,
now.
okay.
Yeah, he's dead now.
Okay.
So that artist didn't know deadly squat how to draw. He doesn't know. But he didn't let that stop him from producing the most amazing arts. So he got into the whole anatomy of people, like human body. So he drew this, like, scribbled. Like, if you Google them, you can see them. They look very scribbled and very, very, like, again, a child made art. But those art, like, had a story behind him, and the way he developed himself. Again, he was not taught. He just wanted to express himself. So he's one of the biggest names in, like, modern arts, because his painting is not getting sold for, like, 10, 20 million. Because the value of that guy is his expression, not his works. Well, I mean, the works are very big and very amazing, but, like, the depth. That's what I'm talking about,
No, that's really, really great that you have that perspective and that you're trying to bring this to people, because for most of us, like the layman, this doesn't necessarily, it's difficult for us to really kind of capture or really kind of understand, but I think art always has to be kind of challenging or tearing it. Another example of this is what do you think of Salvador Dali?
Yeah. So, like, I genuinely like his works, because out of, like, again,
who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
It's like the one subversive artist that everybody sees a Salvador Dali painting and they're like, holy crap, right? Like,
he's an amazing artist.
Yeah.
Like, I respect his work.
Melting clocks and elephants on sticks.
I mean, there were a lot of, like, artists, like, that guy is very mid 60s, 1960s. Like, I like his works, but they're creepy, So that has actually grown to something else. You can actually go on Instagram. You can actually find an artist by the name of, like, I forgot the artist's name, but, like,
surrealist kind of thing, yeah.
But digital art. But he makes, like, current issues and makes them in a weirdest way. I mean, like, they're like, he drew a painting of where, like, a lot of Mark Zuckerberg's, like, running around the floor, and there was this huge robot by the name of Meta. Because whatever is happening right now, that's how they're expressing it. Because like when you come to art, like, there's just perspective. So one artist does something, and the artists follow. So there are, like, a few artists that actually deviate and create their own stuff.
Right.
But, like, if you come here, there are, like, artists, like the artist that I was talking about, like, her school of thought is Basquiat, the scribble paintings. We have, like,
which is fun and everything, because that gives Basquiat significance.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, the people who really make their mark are the people who deviate.
Yeah.
And this is true not just of art, right?
No,
this is true in any kind of pursuit. In natural science, I mean, Einstein. Right?
Exactly.
But even in liberal arts, right? You make your mark by being different.
But you pave the way for the people behind you.
Right.
Like, that's why. So that's what we need here. Like, an artist that could pave the way
and takes risks.
Yeah.
So I mean, you say Apothecary passed away, right? What was it, 6-7 years ago? I seem to recall.
Longer.
Right, it was right around the time I moved here, right?
Yeah.
So it was an older generation. Here's a thought. Since we talk about education, I mentioned this to you in a different context, but I know that people from the generation of Africa they belong to, who went through the revolution and the Red Terror and all the troubles in the 80s involving.
Actually, to be honest, like the Red Terror, like the whole revolution and the whole dark, actually paved a good way for like most of the respected artists right now, because they had the the chance to actually go out the country and actually learn from abroad, because most of these artists actually went to Russia, like because they were in art school and they were like students back in then. So they got taught about contemporary arts, because one of the biggest names, like again, Addis Ababa, so those people have developed their language of what type of art we're gonna create in Russia, and actually helped the art history in Ethiopia. But like after that, kind of went low. It was slow.
So I mean, the question is why? Because of course, both the late Haile Selassie, early Doug, there was all these new interactions being formed with the modern world, the different kind of exposures, which we're seeing now again because of the internet, because of satellite, because and this causes different kinds of rifts generationally, which is one of the main themes of what we're doing on our station generally. But like, what I sense from being around people from that older generation, people who raised me, people I was around, is the part of the reason for this shift towards science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, and people being like, people will literally use the term, that's just your opinion, or that's your interpretation, or that's just art, like as if like anything that isn't a bunch, like anything that isn't material, substantive, science, technology, engineering, math, everything that is political, all that is just not. First of all, we live in a world of social media where everybody's opinion is equal. Right? So an opinion is like, that people just that's just your opinion. Well, I'm sorry, some people have informed opinions and some people don't. Just because something is opinion doesn't mean it's nonsense or it's wrong.
With it,
Right? And so I guess what I'm saying is, I think a lot of people from that generation went, boy, we really paid for, the price for going into the social sciences and the liberal arts and being that kind of exposure that we were just talking about under Dad again, and in the late years of Haile Selassie, where because of that, there was a sense of like, dude, if you want to avoid like literally getting killed because you're part of a student movement, or if you want to avoid being devalued because go do something technical. Go learn something. Go learn computers. Go learn civil engineering. Go learn something. That way, you're not as imperiled by the whims of like the social and political situation. And I understand that, but my hope is, and we discussed this outside of this concept, that my hope is that this is cyclical, right? And that now that people are like, well, listen, this obsession with science and technology and engineering, and math, that's great. We will always need those people, but how about just like there are cycles in art movements as well, right? There's the classicists, there's the romanticists, or more follow your heart. Then there's the realists, who are more like, hey, let's pay attention to real. Then there's the surreal. Everybody reacts to what came before. Hopefully, there's a new cycle coming. That's what I'm trying to say. Where people like you are trying to bring back this actual appreciation, even if they're not doing it themselves. Appreciation and valorization of.
It's actually happening. Like, I'm not going to lie about it. This is what we were witnessing actually. So like, it's different for like artists like 10 years ago. In reality, that it's right now, because a whole bunch of artists are actually getting employed by the government to actually do some like CD beautification and like graffiti arts. And a lot of like artsy type of places are getting open for them to actually express themselves. So like, I think it happened like 2 months ago. Government workers, people from the post office came through. It was like, we wanted to share experience on how you're managing your gallery, and we want to open an art gallery by ourselves because we have a small museum for like old postcards and stuff like that. So like, in reality, it's actually happening. It's actually opening up. It's opening up.
Because there is more of an aesthetic sensibility because of this current state, and any number of people who were like, let's clean things up, let's plant trees, let's beautify the city. I mean, in the U.S., there's a parallel in the 1930s and 40s. There was a real investment in public sector, public works and all that, because of the Depression and whatnot. There were all these artist collectives and all of these, that were really driven by the state, from theater, from and it's weird to people. It's like you're being subsidized by the government to be an artist, to be like an inherently rebellious. But this is a thing in certain societies of like, hey, let's actually make major investments in the arts, and often one of the things that artists complain about is actually when the public sector and when the government start to pull back from from putting national endowments for the arts and that kind of thing. So
true. Like
so,
I mean, like the West government, like we might not subsidize them, but like that's not the point. But it's actually paving a way for them to actually not worry about this stuff and not worry about where they're going to show their work, and just focus on their creativity. And I would actually like to thank this one guy who's actually like bringing about like a very, very structured and very cultural and very growth based like a situation for the people. Is like Malak from Fandika. So that guy is actually doing the most amazing work.
Oh, it's fantastic. If anybody who's listening has not been to Fandika, it's in Kazanchis.
Yeah.
Right? It's a central part of Kazanchis.
Yeah.
It's a cool little space.
Very cool space,
sort of bar restaurant-ish.
Yeah.
But they have galleries there, and always really interesting thing. Dancing and photography and always different kind of exhibits. But
so like what I respect about that place is like he tried to bring about like whatever is like not represented in the city, in the country, into one small space.
Right.
So what he did was like he opened a gallery space in the back. He has a jazz band playing in the front, which is authentic Ethiopian music and stuff like that. Because Ethiopian culture needs to be exposed. Like that's all you know about. Like because not many people know about like the whole Ethiopic series.
Right.
And I don't want to get off topic, but like as much as not anybody not knowing about those old school works, people don't know about the old school arts. Because people know effectively for doing most of the famous arts that you know on calendars. And that's what I know.
Right.
Because we had that calendar.
That's
in the
what
house.
hangs in your house, and that's functional.
But yeah, exactly.
Right.
But Afro-Teklis, what made Afro-Tekli him is the previous works that he had, which were like amazing. Like I wish you had the chance to actually check them out because they were amazing. So that guy paved the way for like the up and coming artists. And there are a lot of like people who do sculptures and stuff, like very creative people. But in reality, it's just paving a way, as you said, did. But like now the artist is like feeling comfortable expressing themselves. And I know people who are like doing artwork on like things that you can't even do artwork on, like gender issues or family stuff or like even like suicidal stuff. Like those like things that we as Ethiopians don't discuss about openly. Those stuff, like artists are finding the space to actually express themselves because that's what modern art is.
And it's very important for us to create spaces, whether it's through the creative arts or through a station like this. I mean, this is why we use the term offense necessary.
Yeah.
To discuss all of those issues. I mean, women in the domestic space. We talk about feminism. We talk about women coming into the workplace. We talk about women in the social sphere. We talk about women, but women's work in the domestic space, somewhat hidden from view, right? Anything that is hidden from view that is not really being discussed, either because it tears at the social fiber or challenges people, that is precisely what you would want these spaces to sort of expose. Right?
Yeah, true. Right, exactly. Like this places, if not for this type of places, the artist would just like keep on producing his artwork. And if I know for a fact, you've noticed, like people selling their artworks on the streets. I mean, they're good. They're really good. But like, why? Why are
on
they
the streets?
Yeah,
right.
There needs to be a space for them where they just like hang them stuff so like they could sell. I have a friend, very close friend of mine, who's struggling as an artist. Like he basically doesn't do anything of his own creation. What he does is like commoditize what like the outside world wants. Like he
probably
sells
because that's what
stuff,
he figures will make money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he's trying his best because there's no platform for them.
Right.
And then like we're biased too. Like there are a lot of people, there are a lot of galleries that are biased because it's a very small community and we all know each other. So since it's a business where everybody's trying to make money, and I'm not going to lie about it, if we properly represent a lot of artists, we do. But still, a business. That business needs to function and that business needs to make money.
Absolutely,
so if we're not selling, we're not surviving in the business market, because one business needs to function, and in order to function, it needs to make money. So, so there are a lot of artists that get dropped, that get they do. But like, I'm not saying I never say to those people who are like actually like honorably rejected that they're not creative. It's just not here.
They're not finding the bottom line.
Exactly.
But is it possible to pitch to? Here's the thought. And again, I say this as a layman who knows nothing about the gallery world or anything. But you know, this is a bit of there are parallels with liberal arts academics and social sciences. There hasn't really been a breakthrough in terms of social theory, in terms of cultural theory, in like 40, 50 years.
Exactly.
Because everybody, you know, these liberal arts programs are being underfunded, and so everybody just kind of follows the fad, and very few people are willing to take risks because they need to make money, they need to get tenure, need to kind of follow the pack. But the idea is, if you're really a visionary, if you're a patron of the arts, or you're starting galleries, or if you're really a visionary, it's not so much you could possibly like compartmentalize your mind. Like, here's stuff that's going to make me money to stay afloat, and then I also want to give people a space to not make money right now, such that maybe I just have one guy who comes, or one woman who comes with a breakthrough, you know, that will put not just that artist on the map, but a whole bunch of other people, including myself, my gallery on the map. You know what I mean? Just to have some space to think more long term and more risky.
That was basically actually thought about. Like we all thought about that. Like it was like the business structure.
Sure.
So like for this, in order for this, so like that's why I even go to like the Kilo art school and visit like up and coming artists and go to the studio and check out their work and stuff like that. It's just not about selling. It's all about like what we can give back.
Yeah, I've been to that school years ago. Yeah. It's fantastic. The stuff that keep
actually, they actually made it look better now. Like, it's actually looking good.
It looked nice last time I went. That was some time
It's
ago.
very fun. I mean, there's like a lot of creative work.
Sure.
And a lot of amazing stuff. And so, in reality, what we're trying to do is like, so we have designed a platform for this up-and-coming artist. It's called Addis Show. So it's an exhibition. Like, so every year we have like 5-6 exhibitions. Like basically most of them is going to be solo shows by one artist, but this group exhibition is for up and coming artists, and most of the artists that are working with us started off doing that. So we're exposing them to what the art market is looking like and how much success they can gain out of this, how much exposure, you know, because after one artist signed with us, everything is represented, like their like publicity, everything is actually like, so social media, everything is managed by us, because it's not about just the art, it's about the person, the artist itself. You can sell that too, you know. Right, so what we're trying to get back, so like there's an actual show actually happening at like my gallery. It's called Addis again. It's Addis 4. So like this is the 4th round where we found out like fresh, vibrant artists, and we're showcasing their works. Yeah, in reality, most of them are not selling, but it's not about that. This is all about their exposure to the market, to the life, to the what they could experience.
Because you never know when somebody who wasn't selling suddenly will start selling. Right.
Eventually, because every artist that actually showed with us, I'm not trying to exaggerate or anything, but like they've made it. You know, they're making good money.
Good, that's excellent. Yeah. That's actually really it's heartening to see, because the perception I think out there is artists don't make money.
Yeah,
artists don't make money.
Exactly.
But really, it's if there's good patronage, if there's good platform, there's no reason for that not to be the case. And this is an area where I think more meaningfully where we at times are falling behind other parts of Africa even. I mean, you know, my understanding, Kenya and my time there, I grew up in West Africa. You mentioned television, you know, there was a wave of interest from Asia, from the foreign, but like, valorization of the arts, and even street arts or the arts of citizenship or graffiti or anything like that. We don't really have that mentality right now, but I think in the past we did. In the past we did, in the not so distant past. So hopefully the cyclical nature of things, you know, there'll be a revalorization. But there are these little pockets of people who are very much into arts and culture and.
You brought it. You actually brought it for me, but like African artists, they're interested in stuff like. So like there are like amazing African artists. Like, like I've witnessed this artist from Ghana that works with like marbles. So like the way the marbles are set up, like it's his own sculpture, but like he puts gemstones, marbles, and stuff, like a lot of stuff in it. And this guy was valued at like $50,000 for his work, that specific work. But in auction right now, it's getting sold like hot pockets. But in reality, there are like why the Western actually came and started like noticing African art is just because the art market's dry, you know? It's like empty.
Right.
When it comes to black art, it's just it's not there because all the contemporary arts, all the classical arts, are like all white men, all European or Asian or something, you know. So unless that you've noticed in the British Museum of half the shit that
No problem.
half the stuff that was taken from this, like from the whole continent, is in the museum. Like that's what art was, but like their modern art representation and modern art, like artists that are living in the moment, are not represented. So this past 10 years has been like picking them one by one, exposing them to the world, and the world is learning that Africa does have something to offer.
Oh,
You know?
of course, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how the structure. That's how the world is. That's how
Yeah.
it goes.
And we should also, you know, when we talk about arts, more broadly, I mean, film is becoming a burgeoning new thing. A lot of opportunity in this country.
Yeah.
We're certainly seeing really impressive and really there's a lot of areas for commercial film to grow. Obviously, dance are
Yeah.
all kinds of different dance and performative arts from
Yeah.
different parts of the country also that represent a lot of backgrounds, a lot of nationalities that don't really get exposure. They get it through their dress, their dance, and all that. So we're not even necessarily specifically talking about the visual arts or something hanging on a wall or that kind of thing.
Expressive arts are like people's expression of what they are is by itself as art. So like we're rich. Ethiopia is very rich with this. So like from north to south, from east to west, like you have like different cultures and different representations, and we're trying our best to actually like as much as we can trying to mention these people and try to bring them together as actual visual arts. That's because that's what we do. But like this rich country needs like to actually change their perspective about like what Ethiopian art is, because unless they do that, like who will do them for them? You know, like because you're getting like chopped off from the bottom.
Think of the missed opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially since now because we're in this position, that's actually there's untapped potential.
Yeah.
So this is actually a really good time to come in because we haven't had that, at least in recent years. Haven't had that. Do you agree though? This is partly to do with this really fixation on development means material built things, functionality, right? Science, technology, engineering. Do you think that's why? Or is that just my sense as an outsider looking in that we've kind of gone away from an appreciation of arts?
Because like for the past 20 years, Ethiopia was a developing country that needs to develop, and in order for the country to actually develop, you actually need those functional structures. So the creative space and the actual working space couldn't be like done properly, like it couldn't be represented properly because they were focused on actually developing.
Right.
That was what was happening, So if you're doing that, the people's mentality would be focused on what to do, like
Sure.
Because when you were in college, when I was in college, you're like, how would I find a job? What would I do?
Exactly.
So like I took sociology courses, but like it would be a risk because the artist by itself, like people who have passion take art classes, but most of the kids that are actually in the university for arts, for fine arts, is people like who knew they're not going to make money just for their passion.
I mean, isn't it possible to? Isn't this a bit of a false dichotomy too? Because like plenty of people in this world, they make their money, they do their boring job, they're an accountant or manager or something like that, and then on the side to fulfill themselves.
Exactly.
I mean, there's plenty of time in the day, sometimes even at you know what I mean?
Yeah, but like, that's the structure. That's the difference. That's the Ethiopian structure. That's the educational structure that happens.
Right.
That it guides you on one way. You either choose this, get a degree on this, or you choose that way and choose your own path. Get it? So like you can't do that on the side because like most of our artists actually have side jobs. Like,
Oh sure.
Yeah, because if this doesn't work out, you need a plan B. But when you're young and you're very naive and very like eager to actually do a lot of stuff, that idea doesn't come to you. So you follow your passion or actual structured life. So most of these artists are actually choosing that structured life, and most of the artists that actually like go for it are the people who chose their passion. But like it's not like enough is not done for them. Like, that's what I mean. Because if you're giving up all that and actually taking this seriously and actually trying to become an artist, there needs to be platforms for you to become who you want to be.
Sure.
And, like that's basically the basic problem.
I think that's a good place to stop. I think that's a real takeaway from this.
Yeah.
Is
Thank
where
you
we
for
started.
having
No,
me.
absolutely. So thanks, and
Yeah.
come back anytime. I want us to be a theme that we develop
Mhm.
because it very much goes together with what we're trying to talk about on here. And that's the takeaway is hopefully create more opportunities, more platforms for valorizing artists. So thanks very much for coming on, David.
Thank you,
And,
Zodi.
all right.